Okay, people, welcome back. And we're back to part two, the lineage of Ham, from the book, The Early History of Man, by Bill Cooper. Right, let's get to the page, right. Part two, the lineage of Ham, refer to table 2 and maps 2 and 3. 16, Ham. It is observed that Cham and his family were the only far travellers and stragglers into divers unknown countries, searching, exploring, and sitting down in the same. As also it is said of his family, that what country soever the children of Cham happened to possess, there began both the ignorance of true godliness, and that no inhabited countries cast forth greater multitudes to range and stray into divers remote regions. Thus, the findings of one William Strachey, who added to these words in 1612, the following damning indictment using Ham's posterity of instigating the ignorance of the true worship of God, the inventions of heathenism and adoration of false gods and the devil. Hodgin, page 262, see bibliography. It must be said that Strachey, in writing such words, was hardly departing from the norm of opinion that historians had been voicing for hundreds of years before him. Indeed, whenever the origin of heathenism or paganism was treated, it was invariably to Ham and his immediate descendants that the accused finger would be pointed. So, guys, we've got Ham's table here. So it's Ham. He begot Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan, and Mizraim begot Ludum, Anam, Lebalim, Naphatuhim, Patharism, Kazlaim, Caphatorum, and Philistim. And we've got a sort of separate branch here: Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, Septaka, Nimrod, Sheba, Dedan. And from Canaan, we have Zidon, Heth, Jebusite, Amorite, Girgashite, Hivite, Arkite, Sinite, Arvadite, Zemarite, and Hamathite. Table 2, the lineage of Ham. The peoples of Ham's line populated parts of Asia Minor, the Arabian Peninsula, and eventually the entire continent of Africa, once known as the land of Ham. So Ham and his immediate descendants that the accuser finger would be pointed, and not, it seems, without reason. Even if we discount the testimony of early historians who, it could be said, were unduly biased in their opinions, either on a cultural or religious basis, we are nevertheless presented with overwhelming and undisputable archaeological evidence that all of the early Hamitic peoples were given over to the most debased and degraded systems of thought and worship. Indeed, to say that they were merely deprived of the knowledge of God would be an understatement, for the immediate descendants of Ham were so quick to divest themselves of that knowledge, and so thorough they were in its complete extirpation among themselves, that we can only conclude that they were consented to and were partakers in some grand and wilful conspiracy to destroy that knowledge altogether. In fact, it is within only a few generations of their migration from Babel that we read of the Canaanites, the Sodomites, and others as having filled up their cups of iniquity. And this conclusion is more than adequately confirmed by all the documentary and archaeological evidence that has come down to us. Indeed, even if the Bible had itself remained silent on the matter, then the extra biblical evidence would have been more than sufficient to force us to the sad conclusion that the early Hamitic nations deliberately rendered themselves devoid of all saving knowledge of the one true God. Regarding Ham himself, secular history is almost completely silent, save for the fact that Africa was once known as the land of Ham. The Egyptians likewise called their own land Cam. Cush, number 17. Josephus writes, "Time has not at all hurt the name of Cush, i.e. Cush, for the Ethiopians over whom he reigned are even at this day, both by themselves and by all men in Asia called Cushites." The name of Cush is preserved in Egypt's hieroglyphic inscriptions as Cush, the name referring to the country that lay between the second and third cataracts of the Nile. This same land was later known as Nubia. Additional confirmation of this location is given in an inscription of Esarhaddon of Assyria 681 to 668 BC, who tells us that he made himself king of Musur, c26, Paturisi, c31, and Cush. Some assert that the name of Cush was also perpetuated in that of the Babylonian city of Kish, ostensibly one of the earliest cities to be built after the flood. So here we've got map, all the names. That's Arabian Peninsula by the looks of it, and East Africa, the Horn. Distribution of Semitic peoples throughout the Arabian Peninsula and certain areas of Asia Minor. Among them are shown 8 Hamitic peoples who clearly make up only a minority of the Arab nations. Again, these areas of settlement are not necessarily contemporaneous with one another. We've got the Mediterranean Sea here, Philistim, Kaftarim, Put. Have a look at that, guys. It's Israel region, Cyprus, down to Egypt. Approximate areas of settlement of the descendants of Mizraim throughout Egypt and Libya. Number 18, Seba. He founded a nation that was known to later history as the Sabaeans. Strabo writes of the chief town of Sabai and its harbour of Saba, both of which lay on the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula. 19, Havilah. The progenitor of the Hamitic tribe of Havilah, his descendants settled on the east coast of Arabia overlooking the Persian Gulf, where their land was known to pre-Islamic Arabian cosmographers as Hawilan, but see 72. Koch renders the name as Hawilea and confirms that their settlement on the eastern coast of Arabia, see map 2. Sabta. Josephus records the name of his Sabta's descendants as Sabtini. Ptolemy knew that the Sabtini and Pliny called themselves Mesabathi. They settled on the eastern side of the Arabian Peninsula. Sabta's name is also preserved in the ancient city of Shabwat, the capital of the Hadramut, Hazarmaveth, C63, map 2. Rama, 21. We know from the inscriptions of ancient Sheba that Rama's descendants settled near to the land of Havilah, C19, to the east of Ophir, C71. They are known from other sources to have traded with the children of Zidon, C37, in the city of Tyre, see map 2. 22. Sheba. Ghanaian inscription from the North Yemen, which are dated to the 9th century BC, tells us that Sheba was that kingdom's southern neighbour. The land of Sheba is also known to us from Assyrian records of the 8th century BC. Sheba was once famed as a land of spices, and we know from the vast archaeological ruins, some of whose walls still stand some 60 feet above the desert sands, that the land was extremely fertile, being watered by ingenious irrigation systems that were controlled by a vast dam that once spanned the river Adhanat. In the year 542 BC, however, the dam collapsed after more than 1,000 years of service in an event that is called the Quran and described there as a judgment of God upon the people. The ancient world knew of Arabia as consistent of 4 spice kingdoms, these being Minia, Kataban, Hadramaut, Hazramapheth, C63, and Sheba, but C95, see map 2. Number 23, Dedan. His posterity are known to have traded with the Phoenicians. Identified from various cuneiform inscriptions, their main plane of settlement was a city that is known today as Al-Ula, which lies some 70 miles southwest of modern Tama. C109, see also 696, see map 2. 24. Sabteka, identified by Josephus as the Sabactans. Sabteka descendants appear to have settled in South Arabia, the modern Yemen, see map 2. 25. Nimrod. Writing in 1876, George Smith tells us that nearly 1,300 years before the Christian era, one of the Egyptian poems likens a hero to the Assyrian chief Khazartu, a great hunter, and it has already been suggested that the reference here is to the fame of Nimrod. A little later in the period BC, 1100 to 800, we have in Egypt many persons named after Nimrod, showing a knowledge of the mighty hunter there. Chaldean Genesis, page 313. In fact, Nimrod was probably the most notorious man in the ancient world who is credited with instigating the Great Rebellion at Babel and founded the very worst features of paganism, including the introduction of magic, astrology, and human sacrifice. There is, moreover, much evidence to suggest that he himself was worshipped from the earliest times. His name, for example, was perpetuated in those of Namurda, the Assyrian god of war, Marduk, the Babylonian king of the gods, and the Sumerian deity Amar-Utu. His image was likewise incorporated very early on in the Chaldean zodiac as a child seated on his mother's lap, and both mother and child were worshipped, a pattern since repeatedly followed throughout history. He was also worshipped as the god Bacchus, his name being derived from the Semitic Barkush, meaning the son of Cush. A mountain not far from Ararat has been called Nimrod Dag, Mount Nimrod, from the earliest times, and the ruins of Birs Nimrod bear the remains of what is commonly reputed to be the original Tower of Babel. Likewise, Sir Walter Raleigh's History of the World, 1634, shows a map in which the Caspian Sea was once known as the Mar de Baku, or the Sea of Bacchus. One of the chief cities of Assyria was named Nimrod, and the plain of Shinar, known to the early Syrians of Sen-Ar, was itself once known as the land of Nimrod. Iraqi and Iranian Arabs speak his name with awe even today, and such is the notoriety of the man that his historical reality is quite beyond dispute. See Figure 4, see Map 2. Figure 4, after a very early Babylonian cylinder shield depicting tower building, go to and let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Genesis 11:4. Note the posture of the central figure who is clearly directing the builders. Decidedly spectral does he represent Nimrod, or the fallen, though once angelic being who inspired them. Look like cow horns on their head. 26. Mizraim, a collective name these people settled in Egypt. Indeed, Mizraim is still the Israeli name for that nation. The name is also preserved in the Ugaritic inscriptions as Mizrim, in the Amarna tablets as Mizri, and in the Assyrian and Babylonian records as Musur or Muzri. Modern Arabs still know it as Mizr. Josephus relates a curious episode that was called the Ethiopic War, an incident that was apparently well known throughout the ancient world. According to his account, some 6 or 7 nations descended from Mizraim were destroyed. Clearly, a major conflict that would have had a profound and far-reaching repercussions on the world of those times. Josephus lists those nations that were destroyed as the Luddim, c. 27, the Anamim, c. 28, the Lehabim, c. 29, the Naphatuhim, c. 30, the Partharism, c. 31, and the Caslahim, c. 32, and the Caphtorum, c. 34, see map 3. 27. Ludum. Seemingly known in later records as Ludum, this people settled on the north coast of Africa and gave their name to the nation of Libya. They are known to have provided Egypt on more than one occasion with mercenary troops. The records that tell us this given their name as Lebu. Otherwise, Josephus records their destruction, or rather defeat, in the Ethiopic War. See map 3. 28. Anamim. Secular records are apparently silent concerning this people, which may be accounted for by the devastations of the Ethiopic War. 29. Lehabim. The Egyptians record his name as Ribu, although it is uncertain where they settled. Some authorities, including Josephus, give Libya as their country. They were, however, destroyed in the Ethiopic War. Naphtuhim. 30. This people are known to have settled in the Nile Delta in the western parts of Egypt, where early records referred to them as the Pitwitmweh. Literally, they are the delta of marshland. Josephus records the destruction in the Ethiopic War. 31. Pathruism. The people of this name migrated to Upper Egypt, where the Egyptians recorded the name as the Piters or Patoris, and where they gave their name to the district of the Pathros. Esarhaddon, king of Assyria from 681-668 BC, records his conquest of the Patorisi, thus showing that this people at least could not have been totally destroyed in the early Ethiopic War as asserted by Josephus. 32. Casluhim. The precise whereabouts of their country is uncertain, although the books of Genesis does record that the Philistines came from this people. Some cite Crete as a possible place of settlement, which, if true, can make the Ethiopic War of Josephus a truly international conflict, as he records the destruction of the Casluhim in that war. This, however, only serves to make Crete a most unlikely place for their settlement, the northern areas of Egypt being a far more reasonable proposition. But see 34, see map 3. 33. Philistim. Better known to us as the Philistines, they were known to the Assyrians as the Palashtu and to the Greeks as Palestine, hence the later name of Palestine. After the Assyrian conquest of the 8th century BC, however, the Philistines effectively disappear as a coherent nation. It is currently being taught that the Philistines do not appear until the 13th century BC and that they are to be identified as the sea peoples of Egyptian literature, but this view is entirely erroneous. The Genesis records state emphatically that the Philistines occupied parts of Canaan as early as the time of Abraham and is far from implying that their place of origin was Crete, as currently supposed. It is much more likely to have been northern Egypt. Right, people, I'm going to stop it there. I'll see you in the second part of the Descendants of Ham. Thank you very much for tuning in.